Welcome to WTLC's Open House. My name is Alicia Capone and I will be your tour guide this evening. Since March, WTLC has had to fundamentally change the way in which we provide services to survivors to ensure they have access to the critical support that they need. Like the rest of the nation, we've had to implement safety measures to protect those that we serve as well as our staff. WTLC is an essential service provider, which means we are exempt from any shutdown orders. That's right, just like hospitals are required to stay open, so is WTLC. So we have been fully operational, providing in-person services to people in their own home or a safe location in their community, as well as launching our video platform. Before we go forward, I want to kind of go back a little bit in history. This building that we're in today is actually Fullerton's first hospital, which is now known as St. Jude and is located just a few miles up the street. After it served as its time as a hospital, it became a convalescent center before WTLC became the sole owners of it in 1981. What really resonates with me about the history of this building is the fact that it has always served to care for people, to help people heal, to celebrate new life and new birth, and also to help people let go in times of great tragedy and trials. And what's really interesting is that is still the work that is being done here today by WTLC. So we are so excited to kind of give you a behind the scenes tour of what we are doing to help survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking in your community. So come on in. Welcome to WTLC's Center. In 2016, this tour would not have even been possible because in 2016, WTLC was a shelter-based program, which means survivors in our shelter were the only ones that had access to legal, counseling, and supportive services. Based on a study that was conducted in California, we learned that 44% of Californians who experience domestic violence were looking for services to help them create a healthier life for their families. But they couldn't find any access points because, like WTLC, the majority of service providers that serve domestic violence survivors were all shelter-based. So in 2017, WTLC decided to flip the script and create a different way of doing programs. We moved our shelter from this location to another undisclosed location, and we turned this building into a center, which means we can provide critical services to survivors who decide not to enter our shelter program, as well as survivors who are a part of our shelter program, expanding the opportunities for our communities to become safer and healthier. So you're probably wondering, how do survivors get connected to WTLC? WTLC operates a helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's right. Any time of the day, any day of the year, anyone can give us a call and we're here to help. Calls that come into our helpline vary from people seeking information, exactly what does WTLC do, to our partners, to survivors that are seeking critical services, as well as to community members who are concerned about an individual they may know that might be an unhealthy relationship. All of those calls are received by our trained staff who are able to support, able to intervene in a crisis, and able to help the survivor find whatever they may need to make their lives healthier and safer. Another great thing about our helpline is that we are able to support survivors in whatever language that they may speak. So regardless of the language that the survivor is calling in, we have the tools and resources as well as the staff who are able to clearly communicate so that the survivor understands what we're able to provide and how we can best support them. Now, as I mentioned before, COVID has drastically impacted our programs. And one of the things that we have noticed is an increase in helpline calls. Since March till October, we have had a 29% increase in calls to our helpline of survivors needing critical services. So now more than ever, it is essential that we are able to receive and welcome survivors. Another thing that WTLC did in 2017, besides completely shift this building into a center, is we became survivor-driven and trauma-informed. So what does that exactly mean and how does that look? Well, trauma-informed means that we know that when people experience trauma, that their behaviors may be presented in a challenging situation. They might yell, they might scream, they might get really quiet, and we don't know exactly why. And instead of saying things to the survivor like, you can't talk to me like that, or if you don't do this, then I won't help you anymore, or we can't help you anymore, WTLC instead says, let's figure out how to ground you. Identify something you see, identify something you smell. What can you taste right now? What do you feel right now? And when we're able to get that survivor grounded, then we walk up through a process with them to understand exactly what might have set them off. What happened that caused that emotional outburst? Because we understand that trauma presents itself in different ways, and that a survivor who has gone through a lot of trauma should not be punished because of their behavior that stems from that trauma. The other thing we did is we're survivor driven, which means that survivors control the complete process that they experience here at WTLC. There's this myth, I would say, that if individuals who have suffered or endured something, they don't have the solutions to their own problems. Because clearly, if they had the solutions to their own problems, they would never be in that situation. But like I said, it's a myth. And it's a myth because 9 times out of 10, no, just kidding, 10 times out of 10, survivors know exactly what they need in order to create a healthier and safer life. So they control the entire process. So when a survivor comes to WTLC, they are able to access any of our services, but they might have little ones. So what do we do with the children? Come with me and find out. Peekaboo! Hi, and welcome to WTLC's Children's Room. When survivors come for services, it's not always appropriate that their kids accompany them, and so children are able to come here and hang out with an advocate. They're able to read books, they're able to play, they're able to watch movies, they can do arts and crafts in this space, so that the children are having a fun and wonderful time while their parent or guardian is getting the services they need. WTLC also provides supervised visitation and exchange to non-custodial parents. So we know that children need to bond with their parents, but sometimes that can't happen in the same household or under the same roof. So what we're able to do is we're able to provide staff who are trained monitors to sit in on a visit with the non-custodial parent and their child and engage in activities. And this is also one of the spaces that we use for that activity to happen. While children are having the time of their life in the children's room, survivors are receiving critical services in one of WTLC's many program rooms. Now, you might notice that this room looks like a living room, and it might even be a room that we might find in your very own home. This is done intentionally because WTLC is trauma-informed, not only in the way in which we provide services, but the way in which we design our rooms. Every room here at WTLC uses a cooler palette. It uses softer textures, and it makes the space as airy and fresh as it can be. And the reason for this is because we respond to our environments. The cooler the palette, the softer the textures, and the airier the space allows us to calm our energy. It allows us to relax so that the real work can begin. What happens in these program rooms, you ask? Great question. WTLC provides supportive services, and one of the supportive services we provide is counseling. Survivors have access to individual, family, and group counseling. And because trauma is so complex, we use different approaches to help survivors process their trauma. And we serve children all the way up in ages. Therapeutic art, play therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, known as EMDR, are some of the techniques that we use to help survivors. Another program WTLC provides is our legal services. WTLC's legal program is Board of Immigration Appeals accredited, which means we can help survivors with immigration relief services as well as family law services, such as restraining orders, custody, divorce, and separation. Survivors are greeted with legal advocates who are well-trained and able to help a survivor navigate the complexities of the court, as well as accompany them to court appointments. Welcome to WTLC's Sensory Room. What is a sensory room, you asked? Great question. A sensory room engages an individual's senses to help them deal with this triggering situation. Through the use of sound, lights, water, and textures, a person is able to ground themselves. Now, sensory rooms are actually not uncommon. They are found throughout the United States as well as the world. They are mostly used in schools to help children who are on the autistic spectrum. Now, our sensory room can be used in a couple different ways. It can be used with a clinical advocate accompanying a survivor. It can be used with the survivor just coming in here and independently using the space. And we have also used it to help children who are being supervised by advocates and are just experiencing a lot of emotions and behaviors. We'll bring them in here, and within a matter of moments, this space calms them down, allows them to take a deep breath and to continue on with their healing journey. One of the greatest factors in a survivor's success is the relationships that they build with other survivors. There is no better person to share your story with than somebody who has also endured a similar story. WTLC's peer support groups are offered for PTSD, human trafficking, personal empowerment, and life skills. These groups are facilitated by staff, but they are led by survivors. And survivors gain a wealth of knowledge from each other by sharing their stories, their concerns, their aspirations, and their goals, so that they are successful in their recovery. In 2017, WTLC began to implement what we call mobile services. That means we meet survivors in the comfort of their home, a safe location in their community, at a partner organization. Diminishing barriers is extremely important to us, as we know that these barriers prevent individuals from being able to seek the services that they need in order to create healthier lives for themselves and their community. Let's go find out what else WTLC has to offer. Follow me to the teen room. This is WTLC's teen room. And what happens in this provides space for teens to do their homework or participate in school on wheels or participate in therapeutic art. This allows teens to have their own space while their parent or guardian might be receiving services from WTLC. So the final program that we need to talk about is WTLC's Bridge Housing Program. And although we can't necessarily go to WTL's Bridge Housing Program, we have some inside photos of what our housing program looks like. WTLC's Bridge Housing offers housing options on what we consider to be a continuum. We are able to house survivors immediately in our emergency shelter. If for some reason our emergency shelter is at maximum capacity, we have a safety net program, which actually uses local hotels in order to provide survivors immediate access to safe housing. Once survivors enter our emergency shelter, they have the option to stay with us as long as they need. Each stay is customized depending on the survivor's priorities and their needs. Once a survivor has graduated from WTLC's program, they are able to enroll in WTLC's aftercare program, which continues to provide support and case management for the survivor up to a year. But even beyond that, WTLC believes that once you're a part of our program, you are family for life. And since trauma may reemerge at any point in a survivor's life, we want to be here, ready to receive and support them at any point. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this tour. I hope you learned a lot about WTLC. Our time may be ending, but the fun is just beginning for you. At the end of this video, please turn on your video and unmute yourself. And one of our moderators will bring you to a breakout room so you can continue to dialogue with staff and ask questions about our program. Have a great time.